Hello, Nykytyne. I just finished watching your video on modern art, uh, suggesting that it's in some sense.
Last month, I
Oh, there
finished
it is,
National
playing right
Gallery
there.
of Art.
There it is, playing. That suggesting that modern art is in some sense a scam. That there's something deceptive, intentionally deceptive, perhaps. Uh, about modern art in the sense that you think these people are charlatans or I can't remember the term you use, frauds, uh, the people who make modern art. Um, and I want to say I did watch your whole video, uh, and so I hope I won't be accused of not doing that. But anyway, I think I think this attitude that people like you have um, is mistaken. In a number of very serious ways. I I guess in the interest of full disclosure, I should say I am firmly in the modernist camp. Specifically, I'm interested um, in minimalism. Um, Artists like Robert Ryman or Robert Mangold or Dan Flavin, Dan Flavin. I think, yeah. Um, Saul LeWitt, uh, people like that. I think that's just what I'm interested in. But I defend modernism to the core, um, and I would extend this um, to music as well. Um, I was uh, getting red in the face when you were talking trash about John Cage, for example. And I think people like Alvin Lucier are really interesting and really important. But yada yada yada. That's just where I stand. That's where I'm coming from. Um, just to get that out there. Uh, I think your view is problematic. Like as I said, for a number of reasons. One, uh, there's no real argument to be made, or you didn't make one anyway. Um, it's all very intuitionist, right? It's all very, oh man, this looks bad, right? This is just not aesthetically pleasing. This is they are ignoring um, they're ignoring the history of art, and they're trying to throw out the history of art, which I'll come back to, and is an absolute bullshit claim, and there's no evidence for this at all, um, except in the cases of people like the Dadaists, right, who explicitly wanted to throw out art. Um, I would argue that they actually don't, and they fail at that. Um, but that's another story. We can talk about that if you want. I love the Dadaists are one of my favorite. Dadaism is one of my favorite art movements. Um, so we can talk about Dadaism. But for the most part, I think the claim that the modernists want to throw out the history of art is bullshit. Um, and I think it's just again your sort of intuitive reaction to a Pollock painting or something, or Robert Ryman who does whites on whites, white on a white canvas, or just a white canvas, or whatever. Um, it, I just think that that's your sort of intuitive response, right? It's just sort of a visceral um, uh, reaction, and I think it's not it's not very well founded. I mean, the the whole and this is the problem also with your claim that that oh the response from defenders of modernism who say oh well you could do it maybe but you didn't, right? And this is like supposed to be not a good defense, because there are many things you could do and don't. You could I think you talked about the raccoon example. You know, I could call a raccoon a bear, and I've changed the definition of raccoon, but who fucking cares? You're not a genius for doing that, and I agree. I would agree in most, but I mean, like even that I would only agree with in certain contexts. I think the claim that you could have done it but you didn't. This is actually a substantive response. And it has to do with the nature of art history. And again, it goes back to the idea that saying that the modernists want to throw out the history of art is ridiculous, because if you listen to what the modernists say, if you do your own analysis, not only aesthetically, right, the evolution of the aesthetics of art, but conceptually. And I think conceptually, I think a conceptual analysis of art is really what's important. Is really what's important about art. And this might turn out to be the core of our disagreement, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, of course, but it might turn out that you think that the sort of aesthetic experience, the sort of raw sense data, and any attendant emotional response, these are the most important things about art. I just flat out disagree. I think those things are important, but I think those things, when they happen, flow from concepts, and flow from good concepts. So I would just disagree about the primacy of the aesthetic experience. Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know if that's what you think, but it seems like that might be what you think. And in my experience, that's what a lot of people who attack modernism think. So if that's not what you think, tell me, and tell me what you do think, and we can talk about it. But I place the primacy in art on concepts, and I think if you look at a conceptual evolution of art over time, from pretty straightforward representational art, through folks like Monet, through Picasso, through and on and on and on. And there are, hundreds of names we could put in between, and it would be a very long and complex sort of web that we would weave. I think it's clear, it's crystal clear that all of the modernists, again, with the possible exception of the Dadaists, at least in their own head, again, I would argue that they don't escape art history, and they can't. All of the modernists are in a profound way participating in the history of art. And this is why modernism is important, right? Modernism is important because of what it did as a historical phenomenon. And I think this is true of all art, honestly. The core of what's important about an artwork, in the sense of things that become so famous and well known, is a historical importance. The history of art and the conceptual development of art and the advancing of the conversation about what art is, what art means, that's the importance of modernism, right? And I think your criticism, your raccoon example again. It's a terrible example, and it's disanalogous from what modern art is doing, because one person saying raccoon equals bear, yeah, obviously this is not going to be effectual, right? This is going to have no, this is going to have no power in any sense of the word. But a group of people, a number of people, right, all at the same time, artists, critics, audiences, curators of galleries, owners of museum curators, all of these people coming together at the same time, roughly, very roughly, because we're talking about long periods of history, and saying, we want to advance the conversation about art. We want to start to think about art in different ways. That's very different from just saying a raccoon is a bear. And so I think it's a disanalogous example. I think there is some so I think that your whole critique for the most part lacks the sort of historical consciousness of art that is just fundamental to any analysis of art, especially something like modernism. And I think lacking that type of conceptual and historical analysis, just saying, oh, it looks bad, that's not any kind of argument. That's just, you're appealing to just sort of your intuitions, your gut reactions to a work of art, and I don't think that's legitimate, and I'm sure you know that. I will say, just to end, I'm probably running out of time, I will say that I think there's some force to your criticism that modernism is overstaying its welcome in some sense, that it's getting old, but that's only because, again, you're sort of unconsciously participating or thinking about it in historical terms, right? You want to think about modernism now in historical terms when it serves you because you think it's getting old, which I partially agree with. But you refuse to think about the value of modernism in historical terms or in conceptual terms. You just dismiss it out of hand, and I think that's a little inconsistent. I have more to say, but again, I think I'm running out of time, so I hope you watch this video, and I hope you respond. I'd love to have a conversation with you about this. This is one of my favorite topics in the world. Thanks.